Welcome to our podcast, Teach, Assess, Learn from the Center for Teaching and Assessment of Learning. This is Dr. Sophie LeBlanc, postdoctoral researcher at CTAL.
And I'm Dr. Rose Moravchik, the Assistant Director of CTAL.
This week we are discussing our first Friday roundtable that took place on December 2nd. So this event was moderated by the English Language Institute with Karen Asenovich, Michael Fields, Rachel Lapp, Julie Lopez, and Sandy McVeigh from ATS.
And our partners at ELI came to share some of their insights about working with international students, particularly with regards to English language fluency, but also all of the issues in the classroom that go beyond just language issues and what language really means in a classroom testing environment. So why this, why now?
Well, UD, we have over 3,200 international students right now, and there is a new plan to bring even more international students in the next 5 years.
Yep.
So this is extremely relevant if we want students to be successful in our classroom. And then sometimes, we give tests or assessments to students and we think, well, they didn't do well because they don't master the English language. But actually, sometimes language means culture. Students are not passing because of cultural references, not because of language references.
So one of our big challenges then is to figure out how we can create assessments that will actually assess content as opposed to assessing this culturally bound information, this culturally bound knowledge. We learned a great term from test construction, the term construct-irrelevant variance, which is what happens when you think you're testing for one thing and you're actually testing for something else.
So one of the biggest thing is the idiomatic phrases that we have in exams. For instance, there was a question about someone throwing a Tupperware party. So how do you throw a party?
Yeah.
You can't really do that literally. What's a Tupperware, right? Having a game plan, making sport references. And here I can't even give you any examples because I don't have those references. I did not grow up in the US. One of the very interesting articles that you can refer to, and I think we'll post it with the podcast,
Yes.
was from the New York Times. It's a list of idiomatic phrases that they use in their articles.
And some of the idioms actually we found in that list were things, if you're a native speaker of English, you might not even consider to be idioms, like the expression pay attention, something which I'm sure we've all said or written at some point in our teaching careers. The idiomatic usage of verbs to do things that they don't actually literally mean. Also issues with prepositions like the expression up for sale, and things that I couldn't even explain why they're idioms, like hard of hearing. No idea why we use that construction. The New York Times article has a variety of these idiomatic constructions that are sort of fun for you to inventory and see, do I use these? Have I put them in writing to my students? And what have been some of the challenges that maybe your students have encountered from using these kinds of idiomatic constructions?
And a very nice anecdote here that reminds us that it's not just about international students. So ETS, the testing center that takes care of SAT, GRE, and other big national tests, had a question several years ago about diners. And everyone from New Jersey got that question wrong because they were thinking of diners as a building, not as a person.
We have all kinds of culturally bound linguistic knowledge even within the variation of the United States. So there's all kinds of fun little quirks like that of any language. We are primarily an English language speaking context here at UD, so we have to figure out where those moments of disconnect between what we're saying and what we're asking our students to understand are really happening.
So Rose, what can we do?
What can we do? We had a couple of potential solutions in our conversation. One of them is something we always talk about at CTAL, which is model, model, model. If you're assessing your students for a specific kind of comprehension related to a learning outcome, then try and model what that looks like over the course of your semester. Our workshop with ELI really focused mostly on testing and primarily on multiple choice exam items. And if that's something that you use as an assessment, give your students lots of opportunity to be exposed to those questions.
Right. And one of the faculty member at UD lets his students retake their exams as many times as they want. So during that time, students can master the knowledge, right? Because they have to study again for the next time they're taking it.
Right.
They always have new questions, so they have new knowledge coming in. And really, students end up mastering the knowledge much better than, if they had only had one opportunity to do the exam.
Right, and you can use question banks for this through Canvas, through your LMS. I think in this case, it was a faculty in the business school who actually solicits questions from other students. So students can write those questions and have other students practice and use them in the exams. It's a great way to diversify the language around those assessments to try and spread out some of those culturally bound concepts and give students multiple chances to be successful.
Also, one of the things that I actually do in my classroom is that when I have short or long answer questions on the exam, I actually give them a list of different questions I can choose from during the exam. So that actually lets them have some time research them and make sure they actually understood the question before they actually are on the exam.
Right. And this is a great general point to support all of your students, is that you don't want students to be spending an inordinate amount of time just trying to decipher the question that you wrote, because that question is just a way for you to solicit the knowledge from the student. So if the question is tripping folks up, give them a chance to sit with it. Obviously, consider rewriting it if you notice places where students are struggling, but give students an opportunity to be exposed to that language multiple times and in many different ways.
And Rose, you were also thinking about varied assessments.
Right. I mean, we really did talk mostly about testing, but particularly for students for whom English is not their first language, who have different cultural contexts, think about other ways to assess all of your students. Give them a variety of opportunities to demonstrate knowledge. So instead of only having written work, consider also presentations. It's a great way for students to bolster their English language skills. Consider a creative project if appropriate, different kinds of writing assignments. Just give students multiple opportunities in order to be successful in demonstrating what they've learned.
That's great. And with our podcast, we also have posted an NSF research from 2002. Rose, can you tell us a bit more about it?
Sure. This was an NSF program that was looking at how to create culturally responsive assessments. We have lots of information on the white paper on our website, including a full-page bibliography of all of the educational sources cited in the report. Two interesting takeaways. One was from a study in the 1980s to consider nonverbal communication from certain student groups as demonstrations of comprehension. So this study from the 80s looked at African American school children and ways that they used hand gestures, facial gestures in order to demonstrate comprehension that was never really accurately coded and recorded through assessment. The second piece is actually a caution that I'd like to throw out, which is that we encourage people to work collaboratively and with their peers to come up with really great assessments. And that means having diverse members of your assessment group, whether it's other faculty, maybe graduate students. But just because you have different kinds of people putting together that assessment doesn't necessarily guard against some of these obstacles to comprehension. So you really do need to take a little bit of an inventory of what you're writing, of what the language sounds like, and make sure it's accessible to all students in your class.
Right. So that's it for our podcast. We wanted to remind you that the Winter Faculty Institute is taking place in January, the 9th and the 10th. Registration is still open. You can go to sites.udl.edu/WFI 2017 and register there. And enjoy your break.
We hope to see you soon.